Hello everyone, welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. You can find me on Twitter X at Forrest Hodel. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about why even Bitcoin only exchanges are not a safe place to hold your Bitcoin, with a clear news example of why that is so. Throughout the Bitcoin space, the highest risk thing you could do is leave your coins on an exchange. You might put some money on one of these exchanges and exchange it for Bitcoin and think that you own Bitcoin, but you don't own anything. You own an IOU at the most. All that is an internal balance sheet that they've created an account for you with, and they've allocated that Bitcoin for when you want to exchange it. And you really only own Bitcoin or the right to transfer it with your private keys when you've moved it from an exchange and into your own wallet. Some of the biggest losses of people's personal Bitcoin is the Bitcoin IOUs that they've lost from a fraudulent company or a bankruptcy. You can see this in the case of FTX. We have some repayments coming out soon, and they're getting cash repayments on actually more than 100% of their initial cash deposit. However, if it was actually in the assets they held, Bitcoin, it would be way less because Bitcoin has appreciated so much in price since the collapse of FTX. So that's a great lesson right there. But right now, I'm going to bring up a recent bankruptcy that we have for Prime Core Technologies. This is a bankruptcy of a company that held some Bitcoin as a custodian for the Bitcoin only exchange Swan. Now, Swan Bitcoin, they've been in a few different headlines here and there throughout time. I've never actually used Swan before. It's an American company and I'm up here in Canada. I prefer to use something like Bitcoin Well, which solves the exchange problem because it never holds your Bitcoin for you. Check them out, link in the description if you want to use the Bitcoin exchange that I use, or a better put, maybe platform. It's not a typical exchange. Anyway, Swan has made some great content in the past, but they also hit the headlines because they did a mass firing of a huge amount of people on their content. So I'm not very bullish on Swan. Now, what's happened here is a company that held custody of some Bitcoin that was actually customers' Bitcoin, they filed for bankruptcy. And Swan is, in a sense, having an internal court kind of lawsuit between them and trying to get that Bitcoin and assets back from this company. Whereas the people that are connected to Prime Core Technologies, the asset holders of that company, are wanting the Bitcoin that they held for Swan to be repaid to them because they're the debt holders of this company. So, of course, that's not right. I think Swan is going to win this. I think it just makes sense that Swan gets this back. And we've actually had some tweets here from Corey Clipson, the CEO of Swan. He said, no Swan customer funds are at risk. We've heard this before. Maybe, people can lie, people can tell the truth. We're not 100% sure here, but it says we are trying to get back a little bit of our own money still from an ACH reserve account that we had to leave open till the bitter end. So they've had some problems with this company in the past. I guess what Corey is saying here basically is that all the customer funds have been fully allocated for, and maybe they've used some of their own money. This is sort of speculation on my end, reading into this. This could be, though, a possible way of how they would have all of the customer funds whole, is if they used some of their own funds to cover up the imbalance that would have happened from these funds being held up in this bankruptcy filing. So Justin Betchler here on Twitter has a really great post. I'm actually going to read some of this out and comment on it. It looks like Swan has a hearing in a few days over a 7-page objection they filed last week in the ongoing bankruptcy case of Prime Trust. The objection specifically mentions Prime Trust's fraud, mismanagement, poor accounting practices, and commingling of customer assets as significant to their bankruptcy filing. I read it, and here's what I found. According to the motion, Swan worked with Prime Trust, who acted as a custodian for some of Swan's customer funds. Prime Trust was supposed to hold funds securely and manage them properly, following all the rules and regulations you'd expect from a custodian in that role. Swan and Prime Trust had formal agreements in place that made it clear Prime Trust had a fiduciary duty to protect those assets. Unfortunately, that's not how it played out. Prime Trust allegedly mismanaged funds, had poor accounting practices, and mixed up customer assets. Eventually, Prime Trust filed for bankruptcy. In the bankruptcy proceedings, the plan administrator, in brackets, the person managing Prime Trust bankruptcy, filed a notion trying to claim that all the assets held by Prime Trust, which include Swan's customers' funds, were part of the bankruptcy estate, i.e., they want to treat Swan's customer deposits like Prime Trust's own assets, which could be used to pay off Prime Trust debt. This obviously is a big problem because those funds never belonged to Prime Trust in the first place. They were always Swan customers' property held in trust. Swan immediately objected to this. They argued that Prime Trust had a legal and financial fiduciary duty, responsibility to keep those funds separate, and that responsibility didn't disappear just because Prime Trust went bankrupt. Swan points out that their customer funds were supposed to be held in separate accounts, clearly segregated from Prime Trust's own money. They even had account statements showing this. One of Swan's key arguments here is that the idea of the funds being hopelessly commingled is nonsense, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, and that they're claiming that the funds can't be identified or separated is just an excuse to grab money that doesn't belong to them. Also, there was already a process in place called the account treatment plan to handle disputes over customer assets. Swan points out that the plan administrator's motion completely ignores this process instead of following the court-approved rules that ensure customer claims are handled fairly. The plan administrator is trying to fast-track things in a way that benefits the bankruptcy estate, making it harder for creditors like Swan and its customers to get what's theirs. I'm not involved in any way, but it looks like Swan has a strong legal arguments backed by clear documentation showing these funds were always meant to be held separately and securely. On top of that, Bitcoin makes it easy to trace and verify where these assets are, despite Prime Trust's alleged mismanagement. Too long didn't read. Swan is fighting to protect its customers' funds that got caught up in Prime Trust bankruptcy. Prime Trust was supposed to hold these assets in trust, but after mismanaging funds and filing for bankruptcy, the plan administrators is now trying to claim those assets as part of the bankruptcy's estate. Swan argues that the funds were never Prime's trust to begin with, that blockchain makes it easier to trace and separate them, and that the plan administrator is ignoring proper legal procedures to fast-track the process. So I agree with Justin here that this looks like it's going to go in Swan's favor. It sounds like the plan administrator is trying to push these things through really quickly as to get around that maybe. Again, this is just another indication that your Bitcoin is safest in a hardware wallet with a seed phrase that you've protected, either a multi-sig setup, a single signature setup with titanium plates by, this is kind of the reason that I have the sponsors I have, right? The 3 sponsors I've taken on with this channel are the Bitcoin Well, which is a non-custodial exchange. So they transfer you Bitcoin directly to your wallet. They never hold Bitcoin for you. So it's unlike Swan in that way. The other sponsor that I've taken on so far has been Stampseed, which in my opinion is the best way to store your seed phrase, right? Further giving you self-sovereignty, further putting the control of your Bitcoin in your own hands and securing that forever. And the third one is the Bitcoin Way, which is a sponsor that shows you how to do this, how to do these things without KYC, and set up privacy phones, all these different things that could be important to you, but are in that ethos of owning Bitcoin, protecting Bitcoin, and actually having it off of an exchange, right? I'm very selective with the sponsors that I take because of this. I have gotten so many requests to promote centralized exchanges. I would be making a lot more money from my ads, my sponsored segments, if I did. These people pay you a lot more because their businesses are much bigger, much more profitable. They can extract a lot of value out of people because these exchanges are not Bitcoin only. And I think Swan is in that space of still being an exchange, being Bitcoin only, but really that just makes their business side of being an exchange probably less profitable. So they run into these sticky situations here and there, like having to fire a lot of their content creators, like having to downsize, like having different custodians that end up going bankrupt. They can't maybe, I don't know. There's just all sorts of things here, right? So in my opinion, just because it's a Bitcoin only exchange does not mean that it's safe forever, right? We actually, you have to dig a little bit, right? When you have your money and your Bitcoin on Swan, did you know that it was being held by a third party, Prime Core Technologies? If you knew that it was being custodied, did you know that Prime Core Technologies was mismanaging it? Did you know about this accounting errors they had? All this kind of stuff. Did you know that they were going to file bankruptcy? Of course not. You didn't know any of this. And so you really don't know what kind of counterparty risk you're opening yourself up to by leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange. An exchange should be used for two things, in my opinion. If you're not going to use a non-custodial exchange, it should be used for one, acquiring Bitcoin, a place to buy Bitcoin. Two, a place where you temporarily hold that Bitcoin until it's a sizable UTXO for it to make sense to transfer that to a hardware wallet, to cold storage, to self-custodial situation. Those are the two reasons you use an exchange. You can do that with a non-custodial exchange, but you'll probably want to build it in a Lightning wallet, and then that Lightning wallet might be custodial. So it might just kind of be another workaround for that second part of the reason that you would use an exchange, which is to build a sizable UTXO. If that doesn't make any sense to you, I do have a video talking about that, which I'll link in the description, how to buy Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, and I talk about UTXO consolidation within there. This is an important piece of news. This isn't anything new, though. It's news that this is happening to Swan, right? We see Swan as a trusted Bitcoin-only exchange. They make, like I said, great content. They have a good YouTube channel. They've done that for a while. But we've seen this happen in the past. We saw this with Mt. Gox. We saw this with Quadriga X. We saw this with FTX. There's a lot of things that we're maybe not seeing behind the scenes as well with other exchanges. There's certain exchanges I trust more than others, but that doesn't mean that I trust them enough to put what I believe is generational wealth in their hands. It's better controlled in my hands if it's my wealth. That's part of the ethos of Bitcoin, is being able to have a bearer instrument, or at least the keys to move that instrument. This is also a bit of an ongoing story. So if you guys are interested, there's Magoo here who has some hilarious spaces every once in a while. He doesn't record them, so you kind of have to be ready to be in them. He's trying to figure out some further details about some of this stuff. This is an ongoing story. This started actually a week ago, but this is kind of just breaking on Twitter here. For some reason, it kind of went under the radar. And yeah, so this will develop. We'll see how this goes. I really hope that no customers were affected by this, and I really hope that this is a wake-up call to people that have their Bitcoin on an exchange, that it is ready that you need to get ready, if you're not ready yet, to be able to hold it in some sort of self-custody. And of course, all three of my main sponsors that I've had on this channel can do that or facilitate that in some way. And that's why I have them. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.